everyone, this is Bella, and what you're about to see is a lovely, candid conversation between Dancing Appaloosa and I. Dancing Appaloosa's YouTube channel does these wonderful long form videos where, using her talent for discernment, she's able to keenly dissect some of the more troubling dating advice that's currently out there. And the reason that I love that is because her and I have a common wound, which is really going down a dark path or the wrong path when in the past we both adopted certain strategies from various dating coaches out there, and it drives our purpose, which I think we have the common purpose of just wanting people to get back to themselves and to find their center again, especially after, you know, the uncertain times of when you're most vulnerable, which is when you're dating, and yeah, that can be quite a tricky time. So I hope you enjoy our chats. We talk about ghosting myths. She talks about her time in the feminine energy dating space. So I hope you enjoy, and yeah, and do check out her channel if you feel called to.
So, hi, Bella. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this discussion with me. We're going to just share a few thoughts about ghosting and intuitive led approaches to dating and relationships. And I wonder if you could just start off by just introducing yourself and your channel and your work for us, please.
Yeah, so I'm Bella, or Bella Zella on YouTube, and I am interested in making videos about how people can get closure, heartbreak, relationships, and modern dating.
Wonderful. I must say, as you already know, I'm such a huge fan of your content. I absolutely love your authentic approach, and I'm just so delighted to have you on to talk about some of these issues, which I know a lot of people will relate to. And so I just wonder if we could just maybe start off talking about ghosting. Would you mind giving us what you would consider to be like a definitive example of ghosting?
Um, yes, ghosting can happen to anyone at any time. It doesn't have to be romantic. People can ghost friends. People can ghost um, their personal trainers around Christmas time. I think I've done that before. But with regards, I'm most interested in ghosting in romantic relationships.
Yes, me too.
And I think the reason for that is just because of the damage that can be done. Um, and I think there are ways to mitigate some of that damage. But ghosting is essentially where somebody cuts off contact with you um, completely unexpectedly. So you might have had some glorious dates with somebody and you might be feeling like it's going really well. You might have been intimate with them. They might have introduced you to family. And you're used to getting a text from them every morning, for example, and then just one morning they stop texting and you don't know what's happened. And hi, is everything okay? And then no response. And then that can be, you can deal with that for a day, but then after a couple of days, you're thinking, well, what happened? Is everything okay? And then there's no reply to your messages. So that's one example of ghosting with somebody that you've been dating. Um, but there are so many, and they're also they're all different. Sometimes somebody might be pulling away, and then there's the breadcrumb ghosting as well. It's not the full-blown ghost, which is just someone pulls a disappearing act and you don't hear from them again. You can get somebody that starts to pull away and become distant, and they want to avoid the process of a breakup. They don't want to have to go through that, but maybe that's really what they want. They don't want to be with you anymore. So instead, they kind of pull away, don't give any explanation, behave differently. And maybe months has gone by, you've not heard from them, but they might just drop you like a obscure kind of gif or a reel or some kind of random picture, or they might even just say, hi, how are you doing? Or what are you up to, which is a classic. So those are some examples in relationships that I've found.
Yeah. So it's that complete withdrawal of connection with no warning, really, or proper explanation.
Yeah.
Um, and what would you say are some of the myths and misconceptions around ghosting? What are some of the harmful narratives around ghosting that someone who's been ghosted might hear that might make it even more difficult or even more painful to go through that experience?
Well, there's a few. One of them, one of them is up for debate actually, and that is closure is overrated. So that is one of the most popular things that we might hear. You don't need closure, but a lot of people do. And what I've seen is that somebody might be coming to me and saying absolutely distraught about being ghosted, but the how they might present online or on Instagram is like a photo of them on the beach sipping a cocktail, looking completely fine because they want to present this image of, you know what, boy, bye. Like it doesn't matter. I'm fine. I'm blessed, too blessed to be stressed. But then actually, they're really really suffering, and they do want closure, but there's this guilt around wanting closure. Like, well, some of the advice they've been given is absolutely once someone has ghosted you, it diminishes your value to reach out to them and try and get an answer. I don't believe that, by the way. I don't think that can diminish your value. Um, but that's one of the tripwires, I would say, in uh it, that's one of the tripwires that people trip up on once they've been ghosted, is that kind of that advice. um yeah, what do you think?
I think I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think it's this cognitive dissonance that sets in, where on the one hand you feel discarded and rejected, which obviously we're human and that's going to reflect on our sense of self-worth. And at the same time, you're told by people around you that you're not supposed to care about this other person's opinion. And so you've got these two conflicting messages, and I think your brain really struggles to hold both of them at the same time. And I think that's where a lot of the pain comes in. You just can't resolve that for yourself. It's on the one hand just feeling so unimportant and not worthy of a proper goodbye. And on the other hand, being told that a goodbye isn't even necessary really causes cognitive dissonance, I think.
That, yes, and it's that thing of feeling uh discarded and rejected that then is denied by the culture at large. Well, they didn't deserve you anyway, just move on. And what I noticed is an impatience around people's pain when they've been ghosted, because they should be on this train of like, we're empowered, we're modern dating, we can just reject people whenever we want and we can get people whenever we want. That's how it works these days. But some people have an old soul. Then some people operate like that and they're doing okay, supposedly, but others really really struggle with that kind of being, that feeling of being discarded. um and I don't think, on a somatic level, we're keeping up with like the rate of rejection that we're experiencing, because social rejection registers in the brain the same way that
That's right.
physical rejection does. It's got the same
Yes.
neural pathways. Like it's not a small thing, it's a very big thing, it's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so painful as we're social beings and to be rejected by not just a stranger or someone we've only just known, but someone, as you say, we might have been intimate with. There's just no way you can just gloss over that or brush past it, I don't think. And that's why I really loved your content on ghosting and why I was so drawn to it, because it seems like you give clients or people permission to acknowledge that, yes, maybe there is a need for closure of some sort. Maybe there is a need for answers to why this has happened.
Yeah, it's about claiming the experience as deeply as it's claimed you. If something is still, if something is still hurting, let's take a look at it. And the shame, actually, I keep coming back to that word, but people do feel this. Like, I shouldn't be caught up on someone that I dated for a month. And the modern media, movies, Hollywood is keen to kind of give us that same narrative. We shouldn't care. So then why do we? And I think as with a physical wound or an injury, if it's still hurting, like if you've hurt your leg and you're like, well, actually, I can't actually now, it's been a week, now I can't stand on my foot at all. 2 weeks, now I can't walk. I think we need to look at it. It doesn't matter if on the outside it looks fine. Why don't we see what the problem is? And so I think part of what I am trying to do is I want less stigma around people being caught up on someone they dated for a short time. And I'm not, see, distinction here. I'm not encouraging romantic obsession. I would never encourage that. And there's got to be this, there's got to be a line where we just soberly ask ourselves, okay, was there a real connection here? Or was I kind of just getting too excited too soon? Or was I putting this person on a pedestal when we didn't even date? That can happen. I've got a friend of mine who's kind of like a public figure, and all the time and it doesn't even have to happen to public figures, even people with like smaller accounts or smaller uh it can happen to anyone.
Followings, yeah.
Smaller followings, there we go, that's the word I was looking for. But he gets messages from people saying, I was told by my spirit guides that we're meant to be together, that our souls are intertwined on this kind of level.
Oh,
And his way of dealing with it is just, if he does reply, is to say, I'm absolutely not up for anything like that, and just cuts it dead straight away. So, there is a scale. There's a scale of like, am I one of those people that is just kind of falling in love with someone that I've never met? So that's one end of the scale. The other end is, as I mentioned in my little post about my article about Jane Austen and Sense and Sensibility, where Marianne was kind of gaslit to believe that the connection wasn't even real. Like, you overdid it. You thought, you imagined it. Like, it never really was what you thought it was. But she was led into kind of this image, or this uh romantic fantasy, not even fantasy. Willoughby was very clear with his intentions. He was very clear with his affections, not his intentions, with Marianne. But then it's that thing of dropping the person, and shame on them for even thinking that that's what I was doing. I was just being playful, when it's clear that he was, being romantic or being
yeah.
flirtatious. So yeah, what I really want to do is just help people, or just shed the stigma around feeling pain when we feel that we shouldn't feel the pain. If the pain is there, it needs to be addressed. Like, if you've been ghosted after a few dates and that's causing you to feel awful, it could be to do with a whole host of things that's worth unpacking. Different attachment styles, like there is oftentimes levels to these things, and I think it's worth unpacking and looking at those. Yeah.
Yeah, so I absolutely love the fact that you brought up the example of Willoughby and Marianne. I'd never thought of it that way, but he led her into a fantasy, didn't he? He might not have made her specific promises, like someone who might have dated might not have made us specific promises, and there may not be something concrete there, but perhaps they allowed us to believe in something, and then you feel foolish afterwards for having let yourself believe, and other people contribute to you feeling foolish. And what you're doing, it sounds like, is just helping people to get past that feeling of foolishness and actually look at the emotions that are really there, and why does this hurt so much? And I think that's so valuable.
Mm. Oh.
Yeah. And it kind of leads into what we also wanted to talk about, which is something I care a lot about, which is the importance of listening to our emotions and allowing our emotions and our heart And I know this is something you also care about, and our intuition to lead us when it comes to dating and relationships and how that can bring us back to ourselves. Um, and how that gets lost a lot when we excessively rely on the opinions of others,
Mm.
and especially people who prop themselves up as experts. And although expert guidance and advice can be really, it definitely has its place, and we certainly need that from time to time, the right kind of help and guidance. I definitely believe that with someone who is sufficiently skilled. Unfortunately, I think a lot of unskilled coaches and perhaps even therapists or guides will subtly lead us away from our feelings and away from ourselves and cause an overdependence and an over reliance on them. And I really care about helping people to come back to themselves and to how they're feeling, and to place that as their number one priority over the opinions of others when it comes to something as personal and intimate as love relationships and matters of the heart.
Yeah, so speaking
Yeah.
to that, I'm also a big fan of your videos and your work and what you're doing. And I would like to just ask you about how you got from a place of self-admittedly from your videos. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but
No.
having an over reliance on the dating certain dating coaches or even kind of movements, and what led you to it, what led you away from it, and what led you back to your own inner guidance is.
Yeah, I was very deep in the world of feminine energy dating advice for a very long time. Best part of 10 years, I would say. I was following particularly the Rory Ray style of dating coaches. I've followed a number of her coaches, had coaching from a few of her certified coaches. I was big into feminine energy dating. And I really believed in it. I really saw men and women as these very polarized beings that needed to be treated very differently, that needed to behave very differently in dating. And I really believed in the advice. And the worst of it was, I saw some good results from following their teachings. So it did actually bring me some success in dating. But it only ever took me so far. And then a lot of the time I would follow this feminine energy style of dating advice. And then I'd land myself into relationships that weren't authentic. And I think it culminated in, I kind of got very deeply into the rules style of dating. I'm not sure if you've heard of the rules. It's cringeworthy, and I cringe to think about it. I have no idea how I got sucked into that. But my mom sent me a copy of the rules after a particularly painful breakup, and I read it from cover to cover, and it really sucks you in. I was just in a very vulnerable place in my life. And I started implementing the rules over a period of a year or two, started trying it out with guys that I was dating. And I got myself into a relationship with a very doting man, which the rules kind of teaches you to do. It teaches you to get into these relationships with men who kind of are supposed to worship the ground that you walk on. And I got into a relationship with a man like that. And I I learned via that relationship that through following all this advice, I really had no idea how to just be myself in a relationship. I had kind of lost myself along the way. I'd been kind of programmed through all of this advice to believe that I needed to be an archetype of a certain type of perfect woman in order to have a happy relationship and earn love. And although I had some of the trappings of a happy relationship, I didn't know how to get that authentically. I had lost my ability to properly connect with a partner. And that was a wake-up call. And I sort of thought, well, I followed the rules kind of to the T, and I got into this relationship, and then it just kind of drops you after a while, and you you're sort of out at sea. At a certain point, that advice can't help you anymore. And you also just start to feel this real disconnect with yourself. So that started me on a journey to
Out at
coming
sea.
back to myself.
I find that such an interesting uh, phrase, out at sea, because quite literally, what I noticed as well is that people lose their internal navigation system when they rely too much on external advice.
Yes.
And it's like throwing away the map to a happy life. It's like,
Yes.
because my friend Jamie Cato, he's a life coach, and he's really into kind of like shadow work. But one of the things he says is like, if you attract people from wearing a mask, and that mask could be, following certain rules, or feeling that you have to be a certain type of perfect woman, at some point that mask has to come off. You can't keep up that act all day. And when it
Yeah.
comes off, what are you left with?
And that is what I eventually realized. And I feel embarrassed that it took me so long to realize it, but that is what I eventually realized with so much of this strategy-based dating advice, is that it slowly builds a mask for you to wear and a dependence on the the method. And then once you what perhaps you do the sort of the ultimate goal is for you to wind up in a so-called successful relationship, but you wind up in that relationship as someone who is not yourself. You're there wearing a mask, and as your friend says, at a certain point that mask needs to come off, and the person that you're with is used to relating with you on that level as someone wearing this mask, this inauthentic version of you. And but you're when by the time you realize that you're not really being yourself and you want to start being yourself, then you don't know how to trust yourself, because you've been conditioned to believe that if you give in to what your feelings and your heart is telling you, if you are just yourself, if you just let go, that you're going to drive this person away somehow. That was my experience. I wonder if you or others can relate to that.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I went for an experience of that, um and feeling that I had to, and then it feels like you're playing a role, and playing a role is exhausting after a while, because
Totally
you
exhausting.
you want to be yourself in a relationship. Call me crazy, but that's what I want anyway. There are people that do want to play a certain role so they can get a certain thing. There is that as well. Um, but I wanted to ask you, actually, was there a particular point that you just was there one point, or was there a couple of times where you just felt like the advice wasn't working for you, and you just felt like, okay, I've had it with following this types of this type of advice, the feminine energy, in the feminine energy space,
Yeah.
or or do you still follow any of it? Is it still helpful?
No, I don't follow it at all. I've completely discarded it. And what brought me to that realization was that relationship ended, the one that I followed the rules to get into. I don't know of another way of kind of describing it, but that's just kind of what happened. And the rules and feminine energy style sort of dating advice teaches you that as a woman, your job is to only receive and be fairly passive. It's the man's job to be giving to you all the time. And so I sort of adopted that stance in the relationship of, well, he's the man, he's supposed to do for me and give to me. It didn't feel natural to me, but I tried my best to put it into practice. And our relationship actually ended. And one of the sort of pieces of feedback that my ex gave me when the relationship ended was that he felt as if I didn't appreciate what he was doing for me, and that he kept waiting for me to reciprocate a lot of the kind gestures that he was showing to me. And I had feminine energy dating advice tells you explicitly not to do that. You're not supposed to repay the kind gestures that a man is doing. It's not supposed to be equal in terms of giving and receiving.
Oh gosh.
And that was like, I was so in my sort of hurt state after that breakup, and in trying to, get answers to the breakup, coming to that realization of how I'd suppressed my own desire to give to him in the relationship because of the advice that I was following. It kind of just broke the spell for me. It made me question everything. And that sort of led me on a path of deconstructing. It was really like deconstructing a religion in a way, kind of disentangling a lot of this advice. And I thought, well, if the entire premise of feminine energy dating advice is untrue, and it makes sense that it's untrue, why on earth would you get into a relationship where you're suppressing your natural desire to give to your partner and do for your partner? If that's untrue, then what else is untrue about this advice? And it just, bit by bit, I think it was piece by piece that I disentangled or deconstructed the advice. It didn't maybe come down overnight, but it was kind of a peeling away of those layers of that advice, just based on that breakup that I had. Yeah.
Oh, well, that must have felt quite nice when it starts
Yeah,
to peel
it really
away.
was. I just, they came to a point where I realized, you know what? I think a lot of my own instincts and a lot of my own feelings and who I naturally am is the direction that's leading me in is actually just fine. And I'm more likely to get into a relationship that feels right for me, where I can just kind of relax and be myself and be loved for who I am and accepted for who I am without having to worry about what I'm doing wrong all the time.
So there were moments within that relationship where he would do something and you naturally wanted to do some to reciprocate, but did you stop yourself from
Yeah, I
doing
did.
that? Oh,
I did. Feminine energy dating advice, and this is, people can go in and look this up for themselves, but feminine energy dating advice really does teach you that the man is supposed to spend money on you, do for you. You're not really meant to, cook for him or buy gifts for him unless it's a special occasion. It's not meant to be an
poor
equal.
guy.
Yeah. It's and my ex was very, very generous to me. And and feminine energy dating advice will tell you that it's enough just to say thank you and just to be your sort of feminine self. And that's all the thanks that he needs. And that's a gift in and of itself. And you don't need to worry about, you know, buying things and doing things for him. And I can see now, looking back, how he must have felt so neglected by me. Um, and I suppressed those realizations, which, it's a real point of regret for me.
um Interesting. And actually that's sad. Sorry to hear that, because it sounds like it wasn't a mutual decision to end the relationship.
No, no, it wasn't. And I think it's one thing ending a relationship where you kind of can see why it needed to end, or you feel proud of your behavior and you feel like you've been the best version of yourself or the best partner you could have been. But I really don't feel like I can look back and say that I was the best partner. And I don't want to blame it entirely on the dating advice. Obviously, I'm an autonomous adult. I chose those actions. But if I could go back, I did learn a lot from it. And I learned about the importance of being equals in a relationship and of mutuality. And I suppose it gave me that gift. But
Mm.
I'm very cognizant of other people, you know, winding themselves in a position where they're fighting against their own nature and their feelings and what they would naturally want to do in a relationship in order to defer to the advice of dating coaches and
Mm.
methods.
So, with that in mind, is there any particular practice that you engage with, like journaling or meditation, that has helped you go from somebody be has helped you to go from somebody who was perhaps quite reliant on external voices, dating coaches, to somebody who, if I might say so, seems very self-assured and able to trust your own intuition and guidance?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it was sort of peeling away the layers of influence. And it wasn't just dating coaches, there were other influences that I was listening to in my life. And I think a big part of it was just peeling away layers of influence. But these days, I would say I do really try to cultivate trust within myself. And I do really tune into my feelings on a daily basis as a practice, not just, I don't just wait for my feelings to kind of like be like pounding on the door and sort of call it screaming for my attention. I really do try to tune into my feelings all day long. And I think a great way to build trust in yourself and build trust in your intuition is just to start to use it in small decisions and let it guide you with the small things and slowly build your way up to bigger decisions. Like let your intuition guide you as to what you want to have for dinner tonight, or which route you want to take for your walk, or what you want to wear today, those sorts of things. And then you can sort of slowly build up to trusting yourself with the bigger decisions. But it is all about listening to your feelings and what feels right. It really is about what resonates. And just I think once you really get to know yourself and what feels good to you, then you can start to tune into the things in your external world that can start to feed that. But I do journal as well. I like audio journaling. I like to record. I'm not so much into the writing, but I keep an audio journal on my phone. And if I'm struggling with something or struggling to make a decision or struggling to figure out how I feel, I like to keep an audio journal over a period of days and see kind of what themes emerge. I go back and listen to it.
Mm.
And a lot of the time that'll help me to tune in even deeper to myself.
Tune in. I like that. And I like that you've given like a solid practical tip of small decisions first. Because yeah, of course, why not? Like, and it's interesting because like we get to when we're dating and it's all we're having to rely on external voices, and it might be the only time in our lives that if we start to tune into actually how we're feeling that we've ever done that. Because I remember there was a time, I mean, there's a massive trend now towards intuitive eating, not dieting, but intuitive eating. But it wasn't like that 15 years ago. I couldn't trust myself to intuitively eat. I was, it was about following a specific regimented way of eating.
And you
And
have to have so many carbs and so many fruits or so many vegetables. I actually practice intuitive eating because that's how
yeah,
strongly I believe in intuition. I really do. I think intuition can help us with so many decisions, big and small.
oh, yeah, especially in I would like us to find a way, you and me. I don't know how we're going to do it, but to help people to get in touch with their intuition at the time where perhaps I think it's the most under fire or perhaps the most fragile, which is when we are dating. Tell me if I think that's one of the moments in people's lives when they, not necessarily when they're dating, when they've been rejected from someone but they're going back out into the dating world. And I find it quite interesting that that was for you. You said that I think had you gone for a breakup and then you got sent the rules.
Yes.
And I think it's telling that a lot of people get into reading something like the rules when they're down. You're not finding it when you're feeling great about yourself and you got quite a healthy mojo and a good level of a self-concept. People tend to go to reach for books that literally dictate how you should behave when they're not sure how to behave. That's one thing. If
Yes.
you're like, okay, I'm new to brain surgery, I need to find a book that shows me exactly how it's done. of course. Yes, there are certain areas of our lives where it's a good idea to get information and advice on how to do something and follow a step process. Um, but with intuition, it is something that's more nuanced.
Yes, and I love the fact that you've pointed out that our connection to our intuition is weakened when we're vulnerable, when we've gone through a rejection, when we feel like there's reason for us to doubt ourselves. That's when it's harder to tune into our intuition, and when we're more susceptible to outside voices and people who might not always have our best interests at heart, or who might have our best interests at heart, but just don't know how to help us. Um, and that is one of the problems that I have with a lot of dating coaches, or with this whole world of dating coaching, is that it is a little bit predatory in nature, in that it needs you to be in that vulnerable spot a lot of the time in order to come in and sell you the solution. A lot of the time, it doesn't necessarily work on people who are happy and self confident and filled with self worth. So there is that problem kind of a little bit inherent in the industry, I think.
And yeah, and where I see my work going more and more is, when people are going through heartbreak, how can they most effectively, you know, follow a map to get back to their themselves, to give them a map through heartbreak, and to it is a trackable process, and there are elements of it where people can get tripped up, and there are elements of it where um people need to be allowed to grieve, and there's not enough of that as well, and to understand the grieving process. And even just coming back to ghosting, because I love to talk about that. But one thing that I find interesting with ghosting is it presents someone that's been ghosted. It's going it, if they were emotionally invested in the person, it can present inside their neurochemistry and in their body as grief, as a heartbreak as well. So that ghosting and heartbreak can be cousins in a way. And so like realizing that there is a real process that one needs to go through, and it doesn't have to happen every time, and I'm not saying that every single breakup is going to have to be, oh, I'm grieving. But I find I feel like it's a success that Germany, I need to double check this, but this is what I've heard. I've heard that Germany now will allow somebody time off work if they're going through heartbreak.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And again, I'm not saying that we need to have this kind of mollycoddling culture, but grief is a very real thing. And it doesn't just present when somebody has died. It can present even worse in a breakup, because and even worse with ghosting, because ghosting itself, it undermines the healing and moving on process. It undermines the grieving process. So whereas somebody that's lost someone, they've put them in the ground, they're buried, there is a certain process they will go through and be guided through, from their social group, because we have a lot of sympathy and time for
And
people.
have the support and structures in place to help them with that grieving process. Yeah.
Yes, with certain types of heartbreak where it's not completely clear cut or defined, with being ghosted, who cares? I mean, we care. Like, there are people that care, but on a societal level, you're just cast off as foolish,
Yeah.
or you don't, you just get on with it.
Yeah, get over it.
Get over it.
Obviously, they weren't right for you. You should regard it as a good thing. Look at find the silver lining in the cloud. That's sort of the approach. Whereas and I honestly think that sort of attitude can drive people to look for these quick fixes. They just want to get over it. They just want to move on, and they want to short circuit that process of moving through their feelings.
Well, because they've not been encouraged to give them the space that they deserve. um and to really, and I think the 1-2 punch for those that have been ghosted is that the one thing, on the one hand, you should be lucky. Not you should be lucky, you should be grateful. You're lucky. They've shown you who they are. not good enough, not worthy of you. So therefore, it should be easy to move on. And so
Why
they're
don't you
left,
feel happy yet?
why don't you? Well, not that easy. And if they don't feel happy yet with that platitude, well, then they're doubting themselves. Well, I should feel okay. So why don't I? It must be something wrong with me. And I don't want to underestimate or undermine what that can do for somebody. That could lead someone down a completely different path in life. And what I found interesting, we will wrap this chat up soon. But what I found interesting, what career coaching. I've seen it when I'm coaching somebody in their career and they're saying, "Oh, I want to go down this road," and they don't look happy. And I'm saying, "Okay, well, what do you love? Like, I need to know what you love. Like, what do you feel that you're gifted at?" And trying, and even if I say, if you can ask for anything, what would you ask for? You could have your wish granted. And I see people say, "Oh, I want this thing," but and so then they start to make steps towards a career that's completely misaligned to them, or would start to even thinking about going down this path. And then after a few questions, like um, what I'm trying to say is, I find that people that have been heartbroken can lead themselves down the wrong path in their career. Now, I'm saying it in a very roundabout way, but the way that it's presenting is somebody might say, I really should change career and do this. And they're thinking of going down that path as a way to lead them away from the person they really want to be with. Maybe they're taking space in a relationship or they're going through a break, a period of time where that person doesn't want to see them. And they think, well, I need to be a completely different person. And I need to, be the kind of person that they're going to love. And they're not admitting that. And they're trying to have this like politically correct heart of what they really want is to be back with the person that said they want space. But they can't admit that. So instead, they come for career coaching and they're
Yeah,
going
it's
down a
like,
different path. I'm like, but is it the career that you want coaching in, or is it your love life? And I've said that to somebody, a client before, and she started to cry, and
oh,
and it was like, and it was the love life that was the thing that needed the attention. But because there wasn't, that she felt like there was no chance that she could get back with the person, she just felt like, well, I'll go down this path. But actually, working together, we got them back in touch, and they're together, and as far as I know,
oh
still together.
wow.
and
Wow.
and it's that thing of like, sometimes if people don't acknowledge, or they've not been told to acknowledge, or they don't feel they can, like the pain of being left, or of having the partner wanting a break, then instead of like sitting with that and really working out, well, what they want and what they can reasonably do in that scenario as well. Because it's not just like, oh, if they haven't responded to you, that's it, like let go, move on. Sometimes you need to reach out once or twice and just say, hey, I know you're not responded, but XYZ, but I actually still feel the same about you. And, that we'll craft a message together, but like
Mm.
saying something that's fairly low pressure, but still making yourself known. And somebody not doing that can lead them down the wrong path for years. And I think you and I share the same kind of goal or ambition or hopes for people, that they will find their center, they will find their inner compass that will lead them on the right path. And I think we've both had our own fair share of frustrations of listening to too much external voices and then being led completely down the wrong path, and
Yeah.
potentially, I don't want to say wasting, because I don't think anything is a waste. I think even if you go on the wrong path, it can still lead to very valuable things. But taking a path that it's getting off track,
Yeah,
and yeah.
absolutely. And it's all because you're just afraid or don't have permission or just don't know how to just come back to yourself and to come back to your own heart. And I know it sounds like such a woo-woo thing to say, but it really, all of that, all of those answers, and what do I really want to do for work, and who do I really want to be with, those things all reside, deep inside the person. And I love that. How do we help people to come back to that and prevent them from veering off track for
Mm,
potentially years,
mm,
only to, and as you say, it's not a waste, but only to realize years ago that they come back to that same point
mm,
that they've felt all along, but they've just been trying to deny it. Um, and I think there's a whole conversation that could be had about why do people deny what their heart actually wants and try to have a politically correct heart, as you say. I love that expression, by the way.
mm,
What are the reasons why that happens? I think it's very kind of nuanced and complex and multifaceted. But if we can at least get people to understand the importance, if they at least know that that is necessary, that it's at least necessary to know what your own heart is saying. From there, that's information that you can, do without what you will, as you say, perhaps reach out to the person that you really love and want to be with and craft a message or decide that you are going to go in a different direction. But at least if you know,
mm.
at least if you're aware of how you're authentically feeling, what you authentically want, it's a much more empowered place from which to move forward and make decisions in a much more mentally and emotionally healthy place, wouldn't you say?
Mm.
Um,
And for those that are, completely out of touch, or they feel completely out of touch with their heart or their center or their inner voice, it can be too much to say, okay, what do you want? What's your heart saying? Because they've not spoken to or listened to their heart for like decades. Then I find quite a fun exercise, or it can be fun. It can also be like really difficult for people. But is to say, okay, well, just pretend. Why don't you just pretend that you knew that what your heart was saying? Like, we're gonna just, it's not real. We're just acting. If you knew what your heart wanted or was trying to communicate to you, what might it be saying?
yeah, I love that. I love that because it can be quite scary, can be quite high stakes. Another one I like to use with myself is, and I know this might sound a bit extreme, but it does really help me to make heart-led or intuition-led decisions. And that is, on my deathbed, will I regret not doing this?
Mm,
Um, which path am I likely to regret? And that will at least, I might not necessarily go in that direction, but that'll at least tell me what I want deep down. What am I most likely to regret at the end of my life? And I just find that to be a very sobering thought a lot of the time.
that's brilliant. And it gets things in perspective as well. Because sometimes we can get so caught up in like, oh, should I send this text? Shouldn't I send this text? And if you actually think more, like taking that space, taking some distance from it and go, okay, well, I'm on my deathbed now. Does it really matter? Like,
Mm.
no. um, so I thought, just finally, tell me what you think, but perhaps I could ask you one more question and then we could wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, go
So
for it.
and tell me if you want to answer this or not, but I was just curious. You mentioned like this peeling away process and this feeling of like checking in with yourself and being more in touch with yourself. Um, how does that feel?
It feels like such a weight has been lifted off because I find other people's opinions about what I should do with my life and how I should behave to be such a burden. I really do. And I don't know if I'm quite neurodivergent. And so one of the ways that that sort of manifests is I do actually have very clear ideas about how I feel and what I want. And sometimes I can just bury those under the weight of other people's expectations. And I think just giving myself permission to just be myself and to just completely discard something that I'd regarded as so important for so long, whether it's, and whatever that influence might be, whether it's a dating coach or a particular strategy of dating, or it could be a religion, or it could be the opinions of family or of your therapist or whomever has a lot of influence over you, when you actually give yourself permission to just shed that and you just make it so much less important, you put it in its proper place. A lot of the time, you can see how ridiculous it is, but you've been making it so important. And you just say, okay, well, the only thing that matters in this particular moment, or the thing that's most important, is how I feel and what I want. And obviously, that doesn't go for any decision that's going to hurt people. I'm not obviously advocating for anything that's going to hurt people or take advantage of other people. I just mean when it comes to personal decisions that impact you, when you finally just make your own feelings and your own heart the important and deciding factor in what you decide to do, it's just such a liberating feeling. I can't even tell you. It it feels like emancipation, like just like freedom.
Okay, bonus question. Just gonna throw this one in
Go
last.
for it.
How did you notice yourself showing up from that space as opposed to the feminine dating energy space?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question because the types of partners I started looking for changed drastically. In feminine energy dating, and anyone who's tried to follow feminine energy dating can attest to this. You're supposed to gravitate towards men who portray or display very quote unquote masculine characteristics, very traditionally masculine traits like being successful or being very proactive or sort of being very action orientated. Just there are various sort of masculine traits that you're supposed to prioritize in a mate. And I started to allow myself to let my heart choose the sorts of guys I would go out with instead. And, and that's wound up being guys who are more sensitive, more introverted, perhaps a bit more emotional, maybe not as traditionally masculine. And I just started to tune into how I felt around someone rather than what they were doing and the sort of what they were presenting, this sort of external. And that felt really good because I started to become more focused on connection between myself and people I was dating and just people in my life in general. I just started to focus on the connection between me and the other person rather than on what I was supposed to value.
Wow.
Yeah. So it felt really good. And I would say my relationships really kind of transformed and became just much more authentic since I did that.
Oh, that makes me think of this quote, which is truth is the only solid ground to stand on. And in a sense, it's your truth, isn't it? You're being more
Yeah.
true to yourself. And rather than being that thing of lost at sea, the dating, the feminine energy taking you far, but where's it taking you? And you like take the mask off and you're in the middle of the ocean, you're in out of your depth with somebody because you've been playing a role. And now being what did you say? Like it's like an exhale, it's like a calmness, there's like a peace around the dating, how you showed up for in dating in that space, and having real connection.
Yeah, because whenever you don't know what to do, you can just come back to yourself. And a lot of the time, I would find when I was following a sort of a strategy or a method, if I had a question that the coach didn't have a ready answer for, I would just be like lost and like, what should I do? I'm so worried about making a mistake. But now I can actually give myself permission to tune into myself. And often the answer is there. But even if the answer is not there, I can be okay with, okay, well, I don't know. I don't know right now. And maybe a week from now, I will know, or a month from
Yes.
now, I'll know. But I can just wait until I have the answer. I don't necessarily need to look externally. That's a good feeling.
Oh yeah, that's so good. That sounds so good. I'm so happy to hear that you're in that space, and I've
Yeah.
been in that space too. Like just I got caught up in like different kind of ways to date before, And that thing of like abandoning yourself, looking for the correct answer from outside sources, they didn't have it straight away, and you got the date in 5 minutes, or they're in the bathroom and you're looking like, what should I do in the case of this? And there's no answer. You're thinking, they come back from the bathroom and you're looking like a frazzled wreck, and they're thinking, who am I on a date with right now? Like, she's looking
Yeah.
all confused, as opposed to that thing of like, okay, well, I don't know, and that's okay. It's okay, and it's okay if I'm not okay with it, because I'm with myself at the end of the day. I'm the only person I've got to live with, so I might as well get okay with myself.
Yeah,
And
you just are kind to yourself and
yeah,
you just sort of allow yourself to have your own process with it instead of adopting someone else's process. Yeah.
amen.
So good chatting to you.
Yeah, you too. I think, and I think we both uh have this emphasis around um wanting our content to lead people back to themselves.
Yeah.
And because we've both been through the opposite of that. We know the hell of it, we know the pain of it, and it's boring. We're done with it. It's kind of boring now.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, still a lot of people are caught up in that. So yeah, I love how your content is deconstructing some quite problematic advice that can really lead people off their path. And I hope we can, yeah, keep doing it.
Thank you. Yeah. And I feel exactly the same way about your content. I can see that you have that passion. And I know that you're going to help so many people in your coaching practice and with your course. And I can't wait to see what you do.
Oh, that's so nice. All
Yeah.
right. Well, shall we end it there?
Yeah, we'll wrap it
Yeah.
up, but
Okay.
maybe we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, great.